Welcome to the Berry Tramel Show. Kelvin Sampson was the OU basketball coach from 1994 to 2006 and was a runaway success. With 11 NCAA tournament trips in 12 years, 3 Sweet 16s, and the 2002 Final Four. He replaced Billy Tubbs in Norman and kept the excitement brewing at Lloyd Noble Center. Now Sampson is at the University of Houston, has the nation's #1 ranked team, and plays the Sooners on Saturday, back at Lloyd Noble. Sampson joins us today on the Berry Tramel Show. But first, we want to say thanks to these sponsors for supporting the show: MidFirst Bank, Next Gen Roofing, Weedman Lawn Service, and Two Fellas Movers. I like to help people move, but I'm the oddball. Nobody wants to help you move, but we know two fellas that love moving. Two Fellas Moving Company offers free, no-strings quotes for your move. With more than 20 years' experience, they've pretty much moved it all, and their services don't end at moving. Need to do some remodeling or spring cleaning? They have you covered with dumpster rentals and junk haul services. Remember, quotes are free, and there are no strings attached. If you're moving in Oklahoma, make sure to call the fellas. Visit twofellas.com for your free quote today. And we welcome in Kelvin Sampson. His Houston Cougars are ranked #1. They're headed back to Norman on Saturday night, Lloyd Noble Center. Welcome to the show, Kelvin, and tell us about your emotions as you come back to Lloyd Noble.
You know, I haven't allowed myself to really think about it because of our schedule. This little gauntlet they call the Big 12 schedule is exactly that. We had Texas at home every how many days, and then that following Big Monday, I think it was Big Monday or Tuesday, we had Iowa State at home. Then that Saturday we go to Baylor, and then last night we got Cincinnati at home. So, you're just consumed with the moment. Coaches always talk about keeping their players in the moment. Was equally important for the coach to stay in the moment, the coaching staffs to stay in the moment. But last night after the game, Hollis brought it up first. He said, he asked me, "Coach, do you remember my last home game?" I said, "Of course I do. It was a difference of playing against Syracuse and Albany versus playing whoever in, I think it was Dallas or San Antonio. Had we won that game,
Right.
we were still a 1 seed, but got sent out east to play Syracuse." So I said, "Okay, yeah, I remember it." Hollis, Hollis was right on top of it, and then Kellen chimed in, and Quannas chimed in, and so everybody has so many fond memories. It's just like everything in life, Barry. We choose to think or do what we want to do, and things. When you leave a place that meant so much to you, and you watch your children grow up. When we left Washington State in 1994, I think Kellen was in the 4th grade and Lauren was in the 7th grade. Knowing that your family grew up in Norman, I think if you ask Kellen where he's from, he wouldn't tell you Pullman or wherever. He would say he's from Oklahoma. I think he's a proud Oklahoman. I think Lauren would say that. There's not a football Saturday when the Sooners are playing that Kellen's not sneaking peeks at the TV and keeping everybody on the staff informed on what the score is. So, he was not Sooner born, but he was Sooner bred. And when he dies, he'll be a Sooner dead. That's for sure. And Lauren feels the same way.
Well, it's been Jacquelyn, throw up that picture for us, if you don't mind, if you can get that in there. 30 years ago in 2 months, the Oklahoman snapped that picture. That's Kelvin Sampson and Kellen Sampson on the day Kelvin was announced as the OU basketball coach. When you see that picture, what kind of memories flood you?
It's kind of emotional in a way, but Kellen was really, really close to my father. And I think that's what I think about when I see that picture is Kellen's me and I'm my dad at one point. So he had no choice but go into the family business. Just like I don't think I had a choice. My favorite childhood memories was jumping in my father's old station wagon, 1957 Ford station wagon, by the way, and going to Magnolia High School around the mid '60s, and with him to practice on Saturday mornings. Couldn't go during the week because it was about 15 miles away, and I had school. But every great memory I have with my dad growing up revolved around the gym, basketball, him hitting me ground balls when he'd get home from work, or driving his old driver's ed car. He had about 4 jobs every summer. He used to teach driver's ed. And Kellen grew up the same way. Just so fortunate that I had a dad that was my hero. And I don't know if Kellen would say that, but Kellen and my dad in some ways are my hero too.
Of course, you've referenced not just Kellen today, but Hollis Price and Quannas White and those great guards you had in the early 2000s. Still part of your Houston staff. You've got them all together. The gang's back together. When you guys got together and came to Houston almost 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Every coach has a plan. Every coach has an ideal, a vision for the program. Did you envision the rise of Houston basketball to this point, a Final Four, the number 1 ranking, a perennial national title contender? Was this what you had in mind?
No, I don't know if I envisioned that. I know I'm not good enough to, nor am I smart enough to figure something out that far in advance. But going back to Hollis and Kellen, my first hire was Kellen. As a matter of fact, there was a nepotism law somewhere in the books, and I told him if I couldn't hire Kellen, that it wasn't going to work. You know, he had just got fired at Appalachian State. I had been fired at Indiana. And I always felt like there was part of my career that I was missing. I didn't get to coach him his senior year, and that always, I think, subconsciously bothered me a little bit. And then when what happened at Indiana, I didn't get to coach with him long enough. That bothered me a little bit. And then when he got fired at Appalachian State, my agent at the time said, "Hey, there's 3 or 4 calls, 3 or 4 schools calling, just gauging your interest." Nobody was offering anything. They said, "We'd like to talk to him if he's interested." And so he would ask me about the schools, and I was in Houston with the Rockets. So the other ones didn't make any sense. I didn't want to go and redo a program that was already built. That didn't do anything for me. And they were good schools, good programs. They were going to win no matter who they hired. They just had good programs. But they didn't need me. But this one intrigued me because as long as they would let me hire Kellen, I would do it. And my dad, the last conversation I had with him was 24 hours or so prior to him passing away. And he and I had talked about it. He was not he was one of those old guys that was raised during the Depression that had a hard time, showing his emotions, stuff like that. But we had a good talk. And then in those things, you don't deal with people, you deal with your agent. And I said, "Look, ask him this." And then Mac Rhodes, who was the AD at the time, called me. And at that point in time, I was in a position of power. I wasn't necessarily looking to come back to college because I was completely immersed in the NBA. And whether it's college better for me or the NBA is better for me, everybody's going to have an opinion on it, but the only one that matters is mine. And you said something really, really good a while ago, Barry, getting the game back together. That's really how I saw going back to college. I didn't see it as a potential a team that could win a championship or be number one. I had just taken a job. I think it was 2 days in, and Hollis called me, and his career was ending, and he wanted to get into coaching. And he asked me, what should he do? And the next thing out of my mouth was, come to Houston. I said, I'm going to hire you, Hollis. And so I had Kellen and Hollis. Lauren couldn't come right away because she was in pharmaceutical sales, which she didn't like. She was making good money and all that stuff. As a parent, that you feel good about that, but you want your children to be happy. So, so I had Kellen, who didn't have a job, got him on board. Hollis didn't have a job, got him on board. Got a commitment from Lauren, but hers was a year away. And then couldn't get Quannas right away because Quannas was assistant coach at Tulane. But I got him 2 years later. And the reason I started hiring my guys, Barry, was it was about that time when I took the Houston job, all the great former Houston high school players were finishing their pro careers. You know, they'd gone to Duke or North Carolina or Arizona, Michigan, Michigan State, wherever. And they were calling me wanting jobs. And I said, nope, I'm not hiring those guys. I'm going to hire my guys. Because their coach, wherever they went to school, they wouldn't hire my guys. So why should I hire them? My guys want to get into coaching. So I hired Hollis. I hired Quannas. I hired Kellen. I had Aaron McGee finishing his degree so I could bring him here as a grad assistant. It just didn't work out for him. But I was going to have a staff full of Sooners. All my former players, because they needed a start in this profession. And I said, this is a great opportunity here. It was a startup. You know, when I got to Oklahoma, it was on pause. You know, Billy Tubbs made Oklahoma. It was just on pause. And I just hit the restart button. That's all I did. I hit play. It had already, the greatness of Houston was decades ago. So that wasn't on pause. That was on stop. Matter of fact, they cut the machine off. Sure, we don't even use that machine anymore. But that was a good thing. I needed to fix something, Barry. I wanted to fix something. I wanted to do it my way. I had a plan for that, but I had no idea that the plan would be where it is now. I don't know that I ever thought about that.
Of course, you know, you bring the Cougars to great heights, great success, the Final Four, as we mentioned. And now, lo and behold, in the year 23-24, you're back in the Big 12, a rugged league. It was rugged when you were here. It's probably more rugged now. You could tell me one way or the other. But what do you think about this first year in the Big 12? Transition year. Next year is going to be a transition year. But what do you think about this first season in the Big 12?
Well, when I was in the Big 12 first time, I predated. I was in the Big 8.
That's right. That's right.
So, you know, when people talk about the Big 12, I can tell that they're young because us old guys remember Danny Nee, Norm Stewart, Tim Floyd, Tom Esbury, Eddie Sutton, Roy Williams, Ricardo Patton, or Tom Harrington. I can't remember which one was there then, one of them. Ricardo after that for sure. And I'm forgetting somebody. You have to help me out. But I remember those 8 coaches. I remember the coaches' meetings. We'd go into coaches' meeting and Sunday or whatever day it was at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs. And Norm Stewart was always the last one in there. And he'd look around and he'd go grab the house phone and say, I want a plate of eggs, bacon. Anybody want sausage? He started ordering breakfast for everybody. And then when we transitioned to the Big 12, it wasn't TCU, it was Texas A&M.
Right.
You know, and it's still Nebraska, it's still Missouri, and Iowa State, and I think the biggest difference would be middle to bottom. There's no bottom here. There's only a middle. There's a top and a middle. Back when I was there, we had a stretch. Seemed like every year somebody was in the Final Four. It was Oklahoma, it was Kansas, it was Oklahoma State, and it was Texas. The
Right.
four of us all in I think from 2000 to, and I can have these years wrong, but it seems like around 2000, 2001 to about 2004 or 5, we kept alternating Final Fours. And I think Coach Sutton in Oklahoma State went twice, and maybe Kansas went twice. I don't remember, but we went once, and Texas went once. And so I don't think the top of the league has changed much. It was great then. It's great now. But there's no bottom anymore. Somebody's got to finish last. But, Oklahoma State just beat BYU. Well, BYU just beat Kansas. Kansas beat UConn. If you want to play that game, well, that's our league. It's unfortunate that the youngest team in the league is probably going to finish last no matter who it was. And Mike got caught young, so he drew the unlucky straw. But as he's proven, his team has improved as the year went on, which is what young teams will do.
What are your favorite memories from Lloyd Noble Center and your 12 years in Norman?
The first season, I think, was my favorite because we went 15-0, and I was naive. I didn't know what I didn't know. I remember I got on the microphone one day and just probably the dumbest thing I've ever done, and told them that one of the referees tripped, and the fans started laughing, and I didn't like that. And then, while I was on the mic, they were saying, what was it? Texas sucks or something.
Right.
We chanted Texas sucks. And this was just ignorant on my part. I didn't know enough about the room or the rivalry to not say. I said, quit saying Texas sucks. And 2 years later, I was leading them in Texas sucks. So I remember that. That was the very first year. John Underwood actually said something to me about it after the game. He said, Coach, you will learn. And he's right. I did. So that wasn't a very smart thing of me to do. But 15-0 that first year with Ryan Miner, John Onches, Ernie Abercrombie, Jason Yanish, James Maiden, Deion Barnes, Prince Fowler, Trip McClain. I love coaching that team. They didn't know me. I didn't know them. I appreciated them trying. Calvin Curry. I remember I kicked them out of practice one day, and we came in upstairs, and old Lloyd Noble was not very good back in the middle 90s. But anyway, we had a room up there with a chalkboard, not a whiteboard. It was a chalkboard, green, and you had yellow chalk. And I was writing stuff down on the board, and I went around the room, and I asked them what I thought that they think their strengths and weaknesses were. When I got to Calvin Curry, he said, my jumper. That's when I knew we were in trouble. And I erased everything everybody said, and I wrote Ryan Miner on the board. I said, that's your strength. I said, as soon as you get over yourself and figure out that the way we're going to win is play through Ryan. And Ernie was sitting there nodding. Anshas was sitting there nodding. A couple of Bailey's recruits, I can't remember their names. One of them was a really good player, but he was a freshman. But riding Ryan that year, coming in on a big Monday, learning that afternoon that Kansas had been ranked number 1 that afternoon, and we took that team of at the time nobodies and beat them, and then the fans stormed the court, and I don't remember it being a problem. I do remember I had 103-degree temperature that day, and so after the game, I just remember throwing up like crazy. But that was a good.
That's the Abercrombie shot, wasn't it?
Yeah. The only three made in his career.
Right.
Only 3. But the most valuable player on that team was John Onches. He was a tough little snot. Ryan Miner was as gifted offensively. And I've had 2 lottery picks, but neither one of them was the pure scorer that Ryan Miner was. But the other memory too was we played Iowa State at Iowa State on Fred Hoiberg's senior night.
95,
And,
yeah.
and I remember walking out on the court and the referees were crying. And they were,
The mayor.
and it was like the Coliseum in Rome. They were lobbing roses from the upper deck at Hilton Coliseum. And I go, we're screwed. We got no chance. Forget the roses. One of the referees is crying. He's literally got tears running down. I'm looking at him going, this ain't good. But James Maiden, I think, went 6 for 7. Ryan was Ryan. Anches had no turnovers, and we beat Iowa State at Iowa State on the senior night. Winning the last game ever at Old Gallagher Iba. Those are all great memories. The rivalry, all the games I've coached over the years, none of them have come close to the Oklahoma State, the Cowboys Sooner games at Old Gallagher Iba and Lloyd Noble. And I think all those games helped me personally become a better coach because, over on the other sidelines, a Hall of Famer, Eddie Sutton. You got Roy Williams at Kansas. Norm Stewart was a hell of a coach at Missouri. I think I was 37 when I was hired. So, it's just a great time for a young guy to grow up and earn his stripes. And you feel like that's what you have to do, earn your stripes. Oklahoma fans, I thought, were always great. I don't ever focus on a vocal minority, and neither should anybody else. I base my time in Norman on the experiences I had. So many dear friends gone. But you get older. I'll be 69 years old my birthday, so I'm an old guy now. So, but as you get older, you appreciate the memories, and I certainly have a lot of great ones in Oklahoma.
Of course, you've had a glorious career. You've coached at 2 really good programs, Oklahoma and Houston, taken both to the Final Four. Eddie Sutton coached at 2 really good programs, Arkansas, Oklahoma State, took them to the Final Four. But Eddie went to a blue blood, Kentucky, and it didn't go all that great. You went to a blue blood, Indiana, it didn't go all that great. So the parallels of your careers have always fascinated me. I certainly understand, I think everybody does, why you would go to an Indiana, but why do you think it didn't work out?
I've never really talked about that, Barry, and I'd rather not.
Okay, that's fine. What I've found with your career, though, is the most impressive thing is you go to a place I thought was foreign territory for Kelvin Sampson. Last place on earth I thought Kelvin Sampson would go is the NBA. You go to the NBA, become a valued assistant coach, interviewed for some head coaching jobs, and I thought, what is the world coming to? Kelvin Sampson as an NBA coach. Tell me what you learned in the NBA, why you enjoyed it, and why you ultimately decided to say, no, I'm going to go back to the college track.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I got fired at about 11 o'clock in the morning. That afternoon, I got a call from Greg Popovich. So I was unemployed, didn't have a job. And then my phone rings, and it's Greg Popovich. He had some choice words to say about the situation. He said, you're one of my dear friends. R.C. Buford is sitting here, and we want to hire you. He said, the only thing is you got to figure out what your title is. I said, well, how about coach? He said, well, you can't coach on the floor because that's full, but we want to hire you. How about consultant? I said, it works for me. So I think that was on a Friday. I fly into San Antonio. I had to go to Atlanta and meet with some people. And so on that Tuesday, I fly to San Antonio, go down to baggage claim, Pop's down there waiting for me, jump in his car. We drive to the San Antonio Spurs practice facility. He said, oh, by the way, we got a game tonight. He said, Mike's doing the scout. I didn't know who Mike was. It was Mike Budenhauser. And so I walk in. He said, just, here's where your office will be. Equipment guy's going to get you your gear. Boom, boom, boom. Gave me about 6 or 7. My head's spinning. I don't know whether I'm on foot or horseback. And but I was mesmerized within 30 seconds because they were already doing the scout. The point guard was Tony Parker. The 2 was Ginobili. The 3 was Bruce Bowen. The 4 was, I can't remember now, but Tim. Then had Fabrizio Alberto and a bunch of guys like that. M.A. Udoka was on that team. Damon Stoudemire, Kurt Thomas, a bunch of veteran guys. But the dialogue and the back and forth between the assistant coaches and the players on how they were going to guard separate actions, I couldn't believe it. And then all of a sudden, I forgot where I was. I felt like I was at a clinic, and I was just sitting there listening to people talk about something that really interested me, but I didn't. I felt like I knew it, but I didn't. And that when I got back to my hotel room that night, Barry, my journey began. I got one of those yellow legal pads, those things you can just flip over. They gave me one of those, and I took it back to my room. And every night I would write something down that I learned. And the more I wrote, the more I realized what I didn't know. And then it didn't take me long to realize why college coaches never succeeded in the NBA. We're not qualified. I was not qualified to be a head coach in the NBA. So I felt like the good Lord blessed me. Karen would always say, when he closes the door, he opens a window. So the NBA was my window. And I wanted to totally immerse myself into it and get good at it, but I felt like I had to learn. And I just humbled myself. You got to throw your ego out the door and realize that this is an opportunity to get better. And so I just fell in love with that legal pad. I'm going to find it one of these days. It's about this size. This is my coach's post-game evaluations. So they have to do a post-game evaluation and give it to me, and then we go over it. But that's kind of what it was. It was just an evaluation, post-practice evaluation. What did I learn today? And I try not to duplicate actions or different things. Like Brett Brown, when he had to scout. After the game, I realized we had a back-to-back, so I go from baggage claim to practice today. That night we're playing the Pacers. And by the way, when the game's over, we got to go get on a plane and fly to Phoenix because we're playing the Suns the next night. So now all of a sudden my head's spinning, now my body's spinning. And the first thing that happened, and I'll never forget this, Barry, I walk into my room, players all come by, and I'd known Tim Duncan because I coached him on a USA team. Michael Finley, I'd known Michael. But this is the weirdest thing, and I asked him about this later, and you can ask him if you ever interview him. When I walked into the hotel room, my phone was ringing. I'm assuming it was the front desk or concierges asking, is your room okay? They'll do that occasionally. But it was Charles Barkley. I pick up the phone, and he goes, Kelvin? I said, yeah. He said, Charles Barkley. And then he just said, I want to welcome you to the NBA. He talked about the prior experience, his opinion of it, and I appreciated it. But that made me feel so good. You're an outsider. And I really wasn't an outsider. I was a no-sider. I was nowhere. I was neither in or out of anything. I was just kind of blowing in the wind at that point. But that really meant a lot. And then, all the NBA people just went out of their way to welcome me. But you always look back at, angels. I had two. One was Pop, and the other was Scott Skiles. So Pop was going to hire me full time in San Antonio, but Scott had gotten fired with the Chicago Bulls, and he and I were Judd Heathcote guys. In Judd's book, he wrote that most people assumed that his favorite player ever was Magic, but it wasn't. It was Scott Skiles, who, by the way, has the single game all-time assist record in the NBA of 32. But Scott said, hey, I'm either going to take the Milwaukee Bucks job or the New York Knicks job, and whichever one I take, I want you to go with me. And so I talked to Pop about that. Mark Jackson had now called me. He thought he might get the New York job, and if he did. So I had a bunch of opportunities. Donnie Walsh called me about something about this or so, but I wanted to go and learn from Scott. And Pop thought that would be awesome because he respected Scott a lot. So I think the guy that helped me the most was Pop. The guy that impacted me the most was Scott. Scott was a brilliant tactician, basketball savant. I thought I knew a lot about basketball, didn't realize I didn't. But the NBA really helped me open my eyes to things that I hadn't seen. You know, when you're successful at something, you tend to stay with what you're successful at. You know, and you don't realize that change. But I didn't know enough to know what I didn't know. And so going to the NBA really helped me. And the thing I like most about it, Barry, is I'm able to share it with Kellen and Hollis, Quannas, KC Beard, Anthony Goldwire, because I want to give all the knowledge that I've learned to them. So when they start their head coaching careers, they can be in a much different place and a better place than when I started.
Well, it's been quite a journey, been successful every step of the way, Kelvin, and the memories your Sooners provided in the state of Oklahoma will last as long as people remember basketball. And the good news is you've not gone anywhere. You're coming back on Saturday night for a showdown. It's going to be fun. Are you looking forward? I know you told us, hey, I'm focused on the games, the grind, all that. But what do you, when you walk down that tunnel in Lloyd Noble and walk onto the court, how do you expect to be received, and how do you hope to be received?
Honestly, I don't really care about that. What I was thinking about was I got probably the last 2 or 3 years. I'd always get a text from Toby Keith. Toby was Sooner, but he still kept his friends. And when we would start, we were winning. The year we beat Illinois, then we turned around and beat Arizona, and we were getting ready to play Villanova. Toby was all over those games. And so I probably think about Toby a little bit, not being there. How you'll be received, I think, will be trumped by Kyle Leisher, Gary Purcell, people like that not being there, their friendship, their families, stuff like that. I think that's probably more in my mindset, Barry. People will say and do, the people that cheer and have good memories, I thank them, and I had them too. And the people that didn't, hopefully you had good memories of Kellen, Hollis, and Quannas.
Well, I can tell you, Kelvin, you've always been a joy to work with, and brought fans, media, anybody that likes college basketball a lot of thrills. I thank you for your cooperation, and I can speak for much of Oklahoma, and I hope all of Oklahoma that solidly in the Houston Cougar camp as you mark to what is hopefully a Final Four. So congratulations, and welcome back on Saturday night.
Thank you, Barry. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks a lot. That's all the time we've got this week. We have all sorts of college basketball content at selloutcrowd.com, and you can find our columns, videos, and podcasts there as well at berrytramel.com. And if you want our content at your fingertips, we've got you covered. We have a new app. It's available for iPhone and Android. Download it today. If this happens to be your first time hearing or watching us, be sure to subscribe to our show on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. If you like what you hear, please leave a review. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.